Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today I'm in South Baltimore off of Frank First Avenue, and behind me is Masonville Cove. It is the site of the nation's first urban wildlife refuge partnership with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Port Administration, the Maryland Port Administration. It is also home to Captain Trash Wheel, that garbage eating machine that keeps pollution out of our rivers and the bay. And it is the home of the first nesting pair of bald eagles inside Baltimore City. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Let's start back in the late 1800s, and that's when a small town called Masonville, with a few houses, maybe a store or two, started expanding. It's when the B&O Railroad laid tracks here connecting Masonville to nearby Brooklyn and Curtis Bay, the transportation hub between the Port of Baltimore and all of its shipping, and then the railways going into the interior of America and all of the industries that came along with it. And the town grew as the industries grew. Some of the industries included fertilizer imports. We had no fewer than 27 fertilizer companies in Baltimore at that time, most located right around here. As the industries flourished, so did the town, and land then became more and more expensive. Many residents sold either by will or out of necessity to the expanding industrial companies that were building here. And by the time the harbor tunnel was being built in the 1950s, the last remaining buildings in the town were torn down. By that time, it really was not so much a town as an industrial area. The industrial area was good for Baltimore's economy, but it was not good for the Patapsco River here. The river had basically become so polluted that it was lifeless. By the 1960s and 1970s, as Baltimore's industrial base shrank, this became a dumping ground. People came here to dump tires, chunks of concrete, who knows what. The wild thing is, though, because it is pretty remote, it's separated from the rest of South Baltimore by these railroad tracks. It was a pretty decent wildlife habitat for deer, for raccoons, for all sorts of birds and fish and reptiles. People would sneak through the fence to get a glimpse of those. And in the 1990s, a number of those folks began advocating to turn this place into a wildlife refuge. The Port Administration had purchased it a little before and was contemplating all sorts of things, including turning it into another shipping terminal. That group formed into an organization called the Community Environmental Partnership. And in 2002, with the support of and the urging of U.S. Representative Wayne Gilchrist, the Maryland Port Administration called together an advisory committee to help advise it on making recommendations on what to do. And that advisory committee came back with a recommendation to turn this place, clean it up, and turn it into a wildlife refuge, essentially in exchange for allowing dredge material to be housed here. The dredge material, of course, being dug out of the shipping channels to keep the Port of Baltimore and Baltimore Harbor open. Where that dredge material had been going, Hart Miller Island, by that time was essentially full. So in 2007, the cleanup began. Over 60,000 tons of trash and debris removed, including rubble that was put here from the 1904 fire, and including 27 ships or parts of ships that had been scrapped here. The company that had been doing that was a company called Sea Witch Salvage. It had been convicted of a number of environmental violations leading to the pollution here. Before that, before this ship scrapping, it was railroad car scrapping. The B&O had 50 acres where it was scrapping railroad cars, so you can tell what kind of pollutants might have been involved here. Mercury, lead, PCBs, dioxin, all in high quantities. In addition to the contaminants, at one point the cleanup crew came across a dozen World War II era bombs. They had to close nearby Interstate 895 for fear of what might happen. Luckily, they turned out to be duds. They were full of concrete. They were used for target practice, apparently. And then they came across a couple Civil War era cannonballs, which are still a mystery. Baltimore did not see cannon fire in the Civil War. We did in the War of 1812. but not in the Civil War. Maybe they were used as target practice also. We just don't know, but they came across those as well. And in 2009, the cleanup was complete. This nature center was here, opened as a green building, and the area became crowded with people, both observing the wildlife and helping with the cleanup, which still happens today. In 2018, Captain Trash Wheel arrived, joining the family of Mr. Trash Wheel at the Inner Harbor, and then Professor Trash Wheel, she is at right by Carroll Park. These solar-powered machines with their conveyor belts that take in garbage before it reaches the Patapsco River and the Chesapeake Bay. Over a million pounds of garbage each year. All right, I'm going to wrap up with a word about the eagles. In 2018, a pair of eagles came here and began building a nest in a large tree. It was the first recorded pair of bald eagles to nest inside Baltimore City. And in a moment of great excitement in 2019, they gave birth to a pair of eaglets that they successfully raised into adulthood. The eagles don't come back every year, but they do most years, and they have successfully raised a number of hatches of eaglets. I think that's the term, to everybody's joy. I believe there's even a webcam, at least at times, through the Nature Center's website that you can check them out. In addition to eagles, there are all sorts of other migratory birds, including Baltimore Orioles. And in the correct seasons, and if you're watching along more or less real time, it's now May 2024. I think this is the correct season. You can come here and observe biologists tagging migratory birds, even tagging monarch butterflies as they make their migration southward. So I'm going to end by inviting you to come on over if you haven't been before. There are 70 acres of water, 54 acres of reclaimed wetlands. There are hiking trails, kayak trails, loads of birding opportunities, all centered around this wonderful nature center behind me. If you haven't been, come on down, and I bet you will be surprised at a bit of Baltimore City that many of us haven't seen. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.